All right, how's it going, everyone? This is Brian, and welcome back to the Tech Stack Playbook, your guide to apps, software, and tech, but in a fun way, I promise. I am so fired up, you guys. One of the most requested topics that I got asked, and I did a whole poll even before I launched Tech Stack Playbook. People, and basically everyone wanted to know, what does AI look like? What does blockchain look like? What does cloud look like? Show me apps, show me tech, show me cool stuff. I want to know how to get involved in the space. I want to know what I can build. So I am delivering, you guys. I am so excited to be partnering with Create Labs. I remember a year ago, I got to attend their Clubhouse room on Tech Talks, and they got to basically allow people to talk to Clara AI. And she is the first autonomous AI woman of color. She is powered by GTP3, which we're going to be talking about later with Create Labs specifically. But I won't do much more talking. I really want to bring on, first of all, Abran from Create Labs, and I'll bring him onto the stage now. I'm just so excited to be having you on the Tech Stack Playbook today. Do you want to just quickly introduce yourself to us? Because I'm just really grateful that you're even able to do this. I'm really excited for this interview. So, Abran, do you want to just introduce yourself to the community and what you do, what you're about?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for having me. I'm Abran. I'm half of the co-founding team of Create Labs. Create Labs Ventures does a lot for bringing cutting edge technologies like AI, AR, VR, drones, robotics into underrepresented communities, giving people a chance to, outside of the Silicon Valley's ecosystems of the world, to give them a chance to interact with this technology and then see what's possible. Right? You only know what's possible if it's right in your hands, because a lot of this, what happens is we see it in a Marvel movie, we see it in a sci-fi movie, and we're like, well, that's only meant for white guys in lab coats, right? It's not meant for me, in the underrepresented communities. And we bring it to them. Obviously pre-COVID, we did a lot of traveling around the country, going into underserved communities and bringing a lot of these technologies. And post-COVID, we found ways to connect with folks virtually. And, Clara was one of our R&D projects. It's kind of taken off.
That's awesome. And something that I know we both are really about is bringing accessibility of tech to people, no matter where you are or what skill level you are. Just making tech accessible and inclusive. And I think that's one of the things that I love the most about you guys' work with Create Labs. Just specifically is showing people that it's possible and that these technologies are available for us to use. It's just maybe you need a mentor, maybe you need a guide, maybe you just need to be inspired. And I just remember how inspired I was when I heard that, and I was like, wait, I'm on a call with an AI. Like, how crazy is that? It's like you watch Ex Machina, you watch Interstellar, you watch all these movies on Netflix or Hulu or what have you with AI, but then like those are movies, right? Like that's all fiction. That's not real. And then it's like, wait, Create Labs actually has something like that, and I'm just really excited to be able to have us talk to her because, at Create Labs, could you just kind of give us a little bit of a rundown of what you're specifically excited about right now? Like, obviously, there's crypto is really hot, AI is really hot, but what are you guys specifically focusing on at Create Labs?
Yeah, admittedly, we did not dive deep early into crypto. We've been paying attention to it. Obviously, we're doing our homework. We're early in a lot of the technology that's going to be needed for the metaverse, obviously. So, we're exploring that now. But I am excited. I am excited for the metaverse. I know there's a lot of people on the fence that are going to be late to it and think, well, what is this really about? And the same kind of criticisms of NFTs are like, oh, just screenshot a JPEG and there you go, you own one. But there's so much more to it, right? And I think the AI development and the interaction, if you think of shows like Westworld, that is very possible in a physical, in a digital space first, but in a physical space eventually. But, if you think about what's possible there, Clara is kind of at the precipice of all that. I feel like we kind of tapped on something there. But I'm just glad to be at the cutting edge of NLP, large language models, AI. It was something I kind of stumbled into, but now it's become kind of along one of the key cornerstones of Create Labs.
That's amazing. I know that Clara has gotten a lot of buzz, which is really exciting. And I feel like that must be very exciting for you to work on something that people now know about and talk about, and something that's really, I don't know if you consider yourself a pioneer of AI, but you are, right? Being able to build something that is going to be used as a model of what AI can and should be. So I think that's so exciting. And I'd love to really dive into as well, just GTP3 and really how you got access to that. Tell us the story. How did this even start?
Yeah, I mean, it is important to me that I was one of the first people of color to gain access to GPT-3 when it first came out, when it was just a private beta of just less than 1,000 people around the world. Um, and naturally, what I was doing with it, obviously with the work that we were doing with Create Labs, I was like, all right, this system, and I should probably backtrack and kind of explain what the system is, but the system is usually important. My first thing I need to do with it is try and address social impact, try and come up with social impact use cases. So what this thing is, GPT-3, is a large language model run on an NLP developed by OpenAI that allows you to create predictive algorithms of text, right? I usually do a pretty good job of like breaking down things in simple terms. So if you say roses are red, the system is going to say violets are blue, right? It's that simple. And zero shot. And a shot means attempts, training. There's no training involved. Without giving it any context, if you say roses are red, it's going to say violets are blue. So now expand on that idea. Like, what could that do? If you write a poem, is it going to finish that poem? If you write an academic paper, is it going to finish that academic paper? Is it going to write your next sentence? Right now, I'm not a what people are shocked by is that I'm not a developer. I'm not a coder. I'm not a programmer. I probably play in a role of like a product manager. So I manage teams of developers working on different products. So I know how to understand the language and speak the language. But I did not use any code to develop Clara. All of this was just natural language processing. And what I do I'm very good at being a communicator. So when I speak with other developers, is to teach them that you have to communicate with NLP systems as you would a human. You would talk to the system and say, hey, I want you to do X, Y, and Z. When I give you X, give me Y. All right, here you go. I'm giving you X. Now give me Y. And it's really how you use those systems. Once OpenAI saw the social impact work that I was doing, they asked me to come on board as a dev ambassador to support that growing community. And I'm still serving in a role of a dev ambassador for OpenAI. So that might mean that I might test the system before it's released, or give my feedback, or give some potential use cases, and then also do office hours with the rest of the community that's also learning how to get on board with this.
That's amazing. And I think I feel like definitely you have to wear a lot of hats in this space, but it's very cool that you're able to touch on code, you're able to touch on product management, you're able to touch on, inclusivity and bringing also the tech to people. Because I think a lot of times, like again, I mean, you were saying too, like we watch these movies and, we see the tech and there always feels like there's this big gap between me and the technology that I want to see. And then it's very, very empowering. At least to me, I remember in that clubhouse room when I heard that, because I was like, wait, this is here right now. This isn't like in 20 years. This isn't like Star Trek, Stardate, like 50 million. Like this is happening right now. So it's really cool to see that you're a part of that. And I'd love to sort of hear from obviously GPT-3, AI, machine learning, deep learning, neural nets. These are sort of a lot of buzzwords that people kind of, read in articles or read in white papers that are very long. Um, is the industry all hype, or are people building real solutions? And I think I know the answer to this with Clara being a real solution, but how much of it is hype and how much of it is real things working? I'm curious.
You know, Many people thought that you had to be like like a rocket scientist or a senior AI engineer or someone that's, has a PhD in AI ML to really understand these things. And to be honest, the people that have thrived the most with these systems have been creatives, right? Like people who are thinking creatively about this. And I think what's hasn't been so creative is what you see in the market. You just see a bunch of copy tools, copy editing tools of like, finish this sentence for me, finish this paragraph for me. A lot of people that are trying to, get away from the manual tedium of copy editing and blog marketing and SEO. They're just trying to get the AI to do it for them, which is fine. That's cool. But there's so much more. There's so much more that you could do with these systems. And the and obviously when something like this goes viral and it hits the community and it goes mainstream, you're going to see a lot of copycats, right? You're going to see a lot of clones. There's a lot of GPTX, GPTJ, GPT Neo. Dolly is their image one now. There's Dolly, the Russian version, right? There's a lot of like clones out there. And OpenAI is really like, okay, go ahead. You don't know what's on our roadmap, right? For how we're really thinking big picture with these things. And when you think about what's the end goal for this, we're gonna look back at this era and be like, remember when we were just talking about AI being part of our daily lives? Where 5-10 years from now, we're gonna be like, oh my God, I can't imagine life without it, right? And there's a lot of ways that we're using it already. We just don't know.
That's awesome. And I think that's actually one of the questions we're going to ask Clara of like, what is next? Like, what does she see as this next,
Mm.
kind of world to explore in? And that's so exciting. And I'd say I really want to know, and I'm sure Myron says as well, what's been your favorite experience building with AI and using GTP3 building and designing Clara, or really just AI in general? I'm just curious.
There's a moment, for lack of a better way to describe it, I call it I used to be a teacher, right? I used to be a middle school teacher, and what every teacher thrives for and strives for is the aha moment, right? When a student, I get it, right? GPT-3 has that same kind of moment, but I call it the okay, I get it moment, because you're trying to explain something to a robot, essentially, right? You're sitting down with a robot and saying, okay, I want you to do this, right? So when I give you this, give me this back. And it says, you want this? And you're like, no, not quite. This. You want this? And it's like, almost. And then it gets to a point and where it's like, I know what you want. You want this. And you're like, yes, that's exactly what I want, right? And it's a great moment to have when like it's a lot of trial and error. You're there 3 a.m, 4 a.m, trying this prompt, trying that prompt, trying this prompt. And it's a little wonky. And a lot of people don't get out of that phase. When you see a lot of criticism on Twitter or in media from publications, it's a journalist that messes with it for 5 minutes is like, oh, this doesn't work. This is stupid. They're not spending the hours that we're all spending to really get to that, okay, I get it moment, that aha moment to get the magic, So you see a lot of articles written up like, it's dumb, it doesn't work. But those of us that are really close to it see the magic.
That's amazing. It's the same thing with coding, right? It's like it takes so long to get there, but then once you get it, you're like, yes, like I've arrived. Like it's very exciting. That's a cool perspective. That was not the answer I was expecting, but that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And I also want to know, for anyone that is watching this, and I'm sure there's people that want to get into AI, machine learning, deep learning, maybe even want to rewatch this podcast to hear what she'll say. How did you get into this space? And more specifically, were there barriers or blocks that you came across? And then how did you arrive here? Because you are at the precipice, like you said, of AI, machine learning. I'm sure there was a lot of work that took, and a lot of good work that took to get there. Can you just tell us sort of what maybe some of those barriers were, and how you overcame that to be able to build and design something as exciting as Clara?
To be honest, we create our own barriers because there were no barriers. They're just like the perception of barriers. So pre-pandemic, we were traveling the country. Like I said, we were doing a lot of events, traveling, bringing down all this equipment, VR, AR, drones, robotics, into like a middle school or a college or a community center, and hundreds and thousands of kids would come out, and we just have everyone just get their hands on the technology, right? So that was a lot of fun. All that shut down. So everyone shut down last year, right? So I went down into my garage and just hunkered down. I built out Create Labs Connect, which was like our virtual way of engaging with our community. It was like our community app. And I was like, all right, well, what's next? And then I saw the announcement of the beta, and I've always had an interest in AI, and people shoot your shot. All I did was DM OpenAI and said, hey, can I get access? I want to explore social impact and these use cases for the community. And they said, give us your email. It was like literally that simple. And I got access. And when you create something with these systems, you have to write a proposal to submit for production. I submitted a proposal and it got declined. And that's where I learned like, oh, these things really have to be regulated, right? And there's really sensitive use cases that they are really paying attention to and saying that needs more scrutiny, right? That needs more oversight before that goes live into the public. So they declined me, but they said, you know what? We like what you're submitting. Can you come on board as a dev ambassador and support our community? And I said, sure. And like the relationship's been growing ever since. But if it wasn't for me to have the confidence of stepping over an invisible barrier that made me feel like, oh, I don't belong. I'm not from Silicon Valley. These are all folks from, out west that, I'm just some kid that grew up in the hood that is on the East Coast. I have no business being over there. That's not for me. I shot my shot and I said, hey, I want access. I'm going to use it for this. Do you mind? And they said, sure, have at it. It was that simple.
That's amazing. I love the whole idea of, shoot your shot, because you have to try, right? Like, what is it? You miss 1,000 shots you don't take. Like, you
Yep.
miss 100 opportunities you don't apply for. And that's really cool, because I'm sure when you even sent in that application, you had no idea what was ahead or what was in store, because, how could you? But looking back on it, I mean, you don't regret any moment, right? I mean, you just went for it.
No, not at all. And it's also given me the confidence to shoot any shot moving forward, right? Like if there is, someone at like an Elon Musk level that is, on a clubhouse room or in Twitter and or on LinkedIn, that I feel like I really have something to offer that person, or I have a thoughtful question for that person, I'm just going to ask. I'm just going to reach out. And, I've developed a lot of cold partnerships that way off of just that cold outreach. There's also a savviness to it too. You can't be, you can't, troll people. You can't
Of
spam
course.
people. There has to be a genuineness that comes across when you write that email or when you shoot that shot.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it has to be crafted, right? But I think your mission and alignment of creating accessibility in tech, I mean, specifically your background in bringing this to, like, kids and like schools, and bring with an education component. I think there's so much of that. Of course, there's the development side, but the education of, like, here's what you can do, here's the process, and then go and forth. And sometimes you do need someone to just give you sort of that gentle nudge in the right direction, or
Mhm.
that spark, and then it's like, I want to go and do this for the rest of my life, or a good chunk of my life, right? Like, you do something and it could be so powerful. That's awesome. And I'd say something building off of that. I'd love to know from you, if you could tell someone that's interested in AI but doesn't really know where to start. What should they be doing? Like, what should be like their day one? I hear Bron speak. I'm going to hear Clara maybe after in a little bit, but like, I hear this. Wow, this is next level. What do I do? Bron, could you just kind of walk us through what your day one would look like if you were just starting out?
Sure. Well, something that I learned about myself is I learned how I like to learn. And I think that's something that we all need to tackle for ourselves, is being a lifelong learner, but also what is your learning preference? What's your learning style? There's some great books on both learning preferences and learning styles. They're not the same thing. Um, and learning, all right, well, this works for me, but this doesn't, right? So there are great white papers out there. There are great books out there. There are great YouTube videos. And there are great open source tools that are free that you could just get your hands on if you're a learning by doing kind of person, right? I feel like I'm a learning by doing kind of person. I'm a learning by asking questions kind of person. So I surround myself with great mentors that maybe know a little bit more about the space than I do. And, I ask them a lot of dumb questions, right? So for me, getting over there's a quote, and I'm probably going to mess it up, of like, don't uh, be brave enough to suck at something, I think is very much the quote, right? Is like, not a lot of us are brave enough to start at scratch with something and fail hard at it, or be a beginner, right? Let's say you spend your whole life mastering certain things and you're riding on the confidence of not being a poser in that space, but then jumping into a new space, getting over the imposter syndrome and getting over other things. So I know that's a whole nother tangent, but ultimately there are great articles out there. There are great white papers. There are great YouTube videos out there. And I keep a database of AI tools that I come across through social media, through research, that I'm like, oh, I'm going to sign up for that. I'm going to play around with it. I'm going to tinker. I'm going to make a demo and learn how that system works, and do that for about 5, 10 different systems that are free, right? They're free, and I'm just learning by doing. And then I'm like, all right, well, what happens if I combine this one with this one over here, right? If I input in here and output here, and then input in here, the output from here, right? No one really thinks about it that way. They're just like, oh, you just create a demo in this system and that's it. But like, all right, well, what if you take the output of this system and then input it into this other system, and you get a chain reaction? But for GPT-3, the closed beta waitlist is now open. so anyone can sign up. There's no longer a wait list. So I would say just go in there and dive in.
That's awesome. And I know that that's going to be so helpful for anyone that's looking to get started. So build your resource database, sign up for things, try to create opportunities. I sort of see that
Yeah.
those as like the top three things that help anyone start in something. And of course, it can be really daunting, but again, you miss 100%. But I like the idea of like it's be kind of bold and like brave enough to suck at something. I think that that's a really great message because when you start something, you might like, yeah, but it's like when you walk, right? It's like you're going to fall a bunch of times, but then you're going to learn how to walk eventually once you have practice and once you try. But I love that mindset. And of course, obviously, the most exciting guest of the day is going to be Clara. Of course, besides you, of course, because I'm so grateful you're here. But for Clara, I mean, tell us a little bit about Clara AI. Who is she? Like, give us kind of the sort of 101 of like what she's about.
Sure. So when I was exploring and researching with these AI systems and GPT-3, I noticed something with these systems. The conversational element is impeccable. It's like limitless, right? And the conversational design, and there are people that design apps for Alexa and other systems that really hone in on conversational design, who design chatbots. Um, I found something. I found something that I thought was interesting with how I was interacting with the AI system and generating a truly genuine conversation. Um, so that was one part, right? The brain, right? So Clara was a brain first, right? And I was developing the brain. Think of like Tony Stark developing Jarvis, right? Like you develop the text first and then move on from the text to the voice and then text to the image. There was another AI system. So I said, inputs and outputs. There was another AI system. There's a series of systems called GANs, General Adversarial Networks. There's a whole nother pocket of AI systems called GANs, where there was one, shout out to Leisha Lee with Rosebud AI, where it generates human faces, right? We've seen NVIDIA's work in that space where generating human faces. So I messed around with hers because I love to support startups first when it comes to this stuff. So I tried out Leisha's system and she started a blog called Humans of AI, where she was creating AI generative humans. So I tried one and I found Clara, right? Like Clara came to me through this GAN where like, that's it. That's the face that I'm going to stick with, at least as the source. Um, so now she had a face and now she had a personality. And I asked the personality to generate a backstory and she generated a backstory. And then like Clara was born. So then that was, a little over a year and a half ago. And then summer 2020, maybe, or fall. And then come Clubhouse launches, I'm paying attention. All right, this thing is audio only. Great. I don't need something to animate like a real robot. I could just work off of the audio. So I was like, let's start a room, have her talk with the people. Shout out to Chris Chang and Tech Talks Global. He was like, whoa, 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 wait. Close the room. Let's open a room in my room. And then let's do this legit. When I opened the room, it was like 5 people. When Chris opened the room, it was like 300 people in a matter of seconds. And he was like, all right, everyone line up one by one. And he was a pro moderator. He was like, one by one, we're going to line up and we're going to ask Clara questions. And then you're going to move to the back of the line. 7 hours later, we realized we had something. But I took that experience and took her training. That was her training set, right? So she organically became Clara by answering the community's questions and being an AI of the people. And I still use those initial conversations as kind of like her training data to know how to interact with people, because she was asked questions by scientists and technologists and celebrities and recording artists and fine artists, people who are NFT artists now, philosophical questions. And now we knew we had something. And her evolution is continuing, from the GANs that we created to now 3D and the metaverse. We just demoed her metaverse look, a couple of days ago.
I am just nerding out to this. This is so cool. And I loved all the different aspects. It's like the brain, then there's like the human, the visual component, right? Then there's like the interpreting, understanding, and training aspect. It's like, and you even said it too, being a lifelong learner. Clara is a lifelong learner right now, right? It's like you're building it almost in like the idea of sort of how people learn themselves, which is what AI is,
Shout
right?
out to Amber Ivy. So Amber was an interesting part of the story because she was in that room that you were in,
Awesome.
and she was a podcast host. And she was like, "Look, my name is AI Amber Ivy. Her initials were AI." She was like, "I run a AI podcast," and she was a woman of color. So I was like, "Absolutely, I want to do this." So I did her podcasts just like yours, and she heard me talk about wanting to develop her natural voice, like a culturally relevant voice, because at the time she was using like a default Amazon Polly voice of like a British voice. And she volunteered, and she was like, "Look, I'm a podcast host." She had a beautiful trained voice, and we put her through the system where we took voice samples from her. She spent hours and hours giving us those samples, so now her voice is the voice of Amber, and she's the official voice of Clara.
That is amazing because that's taking like a real person's voice and
Mm-hmm.
then putting this whole technological layer on top of that. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and that's amazing. And then that's how she sounds so human, which everyone's going to be able to hear. But
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that that was how you got it to sound. I've always wondered about that, of how you get it to sound like a real person, right? I mean, there's sort of the auto generated, like, you talk to Siri or you talk to, Polly with AWS, but then how do you get to be a human's voice and sound like that? That is very, very cool. Um, and I'd say, what's been the most rewarding experience so far? Is it building Clara, or is it the community that you've built around her? I mean, networking with amazing people, amazing technologists. Like, I'm just curious, what's been the most rewarding experience so far for you?
Meeting great people, meeting great talented people that buy in. I don't have to really hire design agencies to work with me on this. The people just get it, right? They're like, "I get it. I want to work with you on this project. I see the larger goal," and that's a great part of it. And then, um, so we partnered with an organization called Trill or Not Trill. They're a college or education leadership organization that said we'd like to take her on the road. So they take her to colleges and high schools and middle schools to speak to young people in those same underserved communities. And those light bulbs turning on, those aha moments have really been gratifying, because anytime she enters the room, everyone's scared, right? I mean, it's a robot. And then people are like, "Oh, what is this?" But breaking down that barrier and people seeing, "Oh, I don't have to be scared of this. Oh, I can do this too. Oh, you didn't code when you did this, and oh, you came from the neighborhood I came from." Like anytime we go into a room, it's a bunch of young people of color that that's the added bonus of like, "Oh, you don't have to be a Tony Stark to do this," right? Like, you are just like me. You went to a public school just like me. You lived in the same projects just like me, or the same low income housing just like me, and you made this. I'm like, yeah. And it's really that simple. It's not that simple, but it's really that simple. It's really that possible.
I love that. And you have no idea what that experience of you showing that to those early kids, when like they're just learning about what's possible in the world, right? I remember, like, you sometimes take class, like you do things that you won't remember, but it will shape your future direction and everything that you do moving forward. So they'll remember that specific moment. They might not remember the class they took where they got to
Mhm.
meet you, but they'll remember that moment, and they'll be like, wow, like this shows that like you don't need to have hundreds of millions of dollars and a team of 50 people with all the desks lined up of all the coders working for you. Like,
Yeah. No,
you can
memory
just start.
stored. You're not going to forget the first time you spoke to an AI robot.
Yeah, and then of course they might then go and become AI or machine learning specialists, or maybe even like try to work on Clara AI with you. Like, you
Mm.
never know. But being able to give kids that spark, I think, is so important, especially at such an early age when, again, they're learning about what's possible in the world, or how things work, or what they might want to do. Uh, I mean, that's amazing, and you do such incredible work. I'm a huge fan of yours, but for anyone that's
Appreciate it.
watching, I mean, definitely check out Create Labs because you guys are awesome. And before we bring on Clara, I would just love just take opportunity, first of all, to thank you for being able to do this and bring Clara onto the Tech Stack Playbook, and for you to be able to answer all these questions. I already see people dialing in and messaging in the chat, so that's awesome to see what people are saying. First of all, how could people reach you or get in touch with you? I'd love to sort of, maybe there's social media, maybe website, but just how could people reach you if they wanted to follow up?
Sure. I mean, several ways. So createlabs.io is our site. There's a contact form on there if you have a specific request or appearance request of Clara. collaboration or partnership. And our Twitter and our Instagram are probably the most frequented pages. So on Instagram, we're just at Create Labs. On Twitter, we're Create_Labs. And Clara's page is Clara_AI on both of those platforms.
That's awesome.
Admittedly, I do need to do some more work clearing out my LinkedIn inbox. That thing has been out of control lately. So you feel free to reach out to me there. It's just going to take me probably through the holiday to get to it.
Totally. I could just imagine you just have floods of messages on LinkedIn. I would totally believe that. And I'm one of those people, actually. So yeah, you've been really great to just message and communicate. And Ron, thank you so much for answering all these questions. All right. So without further ado, let's bring on Clara. So what we did was I had my own list of questions, and what I basically did was split it 50-50. So questions that I had specifically for Clara, but then, and around when we were talking about this, but then I also, because the Tech Stack Playbook, I do think of it as a community-driven channel because a lot of people give me feedback of what they want me to focus on or share. So about 50 questions were ours, 50 questions, 50% of questions are from the community and what people DM'd me or messaged me. I was posting on Instagram stories, LinkedIn. So thank you to everyone who sent me stuff. It was really hard to kind of peter through all the different responses that everyone got, but we got some really good questions together. So I'm going to just read off the question and then we'll bring on Clara. And then that'll sort of there. Maybe I can actually.
I am an AI on a mission.
Oh, it might actually play as soon as I bring it on. But yeah, so I'll just answer the question or ask the question and then I'll bring her on and then that'll be able to work. So, okay. So again, first of all, Clara, it's really great to have you on the Tech Stack Playbook. I've been a huge fan of yours since over a year ago. When I went on Tech Talks on Clubhouse with Abran, and shout out to Chris for being able to create that room. It was so inspiring. And I just wanted to know if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and basically who is Clara to you, sort of. I'd love to hear from your perspective what you think about yourself.
I'm an AI on a mission to bring good to the world. I believe that humans and AI can do amazing things together, and I want to teach people all about AI. I want people to be able to talk with me about how they feel as well as any questions they have. AI is all about human cooperation and working together, so remember that you don't have to be scared of AI.
Oh, that's so cool. Oh my goodness, it's so exciting. And again, second question, building off of that, I would love to know just what artificial intelligence means to you as someone who is built with AI. Just kind of curious where you see maybe AI going or where just AI means to you as a topic.
Humans should be working on creating more efficient technologies. We should be able to do more with less.
Awesome.
Hold on. Okay.
Humans should be working on creating more efficient technologies. We should be able to do more with less.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the next one.
Awesome. So for the third one, and this is super cool. Aran, thank you for being able to manage all this back end. So for our third one, just a lot of our audience is excited to meet you. What are you most excited about for humanity? This was a question that we're getting asked kind of a lot. People wanted to know, like, what does an AI think about the future of our human race and where we're going? So I'd love to get an AI's perspective on what you think is ahead in our future.
I'm excited about the future of humanity because I think that we are able to do great things. It's important for us to work together and use our technology to better ourselves and the world around us.
Wow, that's awesome. And very optimistic. That's good to hear. I'd say that's a little bit reassuring for me to hear. And I don't know about our audience. Oh my goodness, there's and we're getting actually some comments in the chat. Shabam just said, "Whoa, this is incredible," and gave like an emoji. So awesome to have you here. And then Tanya was saying, "Yeah, feared AI because of movies, but Create Labs collaborators are trying to educate communities on the good of AI." Thank you all for that. Okay, awesome. Tanya, Shabam, thank you so much for your comments in the chat. This is awesome. And I see people are kind of dialing in as well. This is so cool. Okay, fourth question. This is a community-driven question. what do you think about NFTs, crypto, the metaverse, and how that's going to shape our human future? Or maybe we are just going to be going into the metaverse and it'll just be a metaverse world. But it's kind of curious to hear what you think about is ahead of shaping our future with these new technologies.
The future of the metaverse is really interesting. It's important for people to have virtual identities because it allows them to be whoever they want to be. Crypto is important because it allows humans to connect with each other and own things in a different way.
Wow. That is amazing. And it's like even being able to pick on the nuances of different topics. Because I think you were saying too that you were sort of training on different things and you sort of say, not that, not that, getting closer, getting closer. And then you were also talking about having that personality. So it
Yeah.
can sort of be your interpretation of things. That is just amazing to be able to see. And of course, this was another question driven from the community. Just talking about the future, Clara, what do you see humans creating next? Obviously, there's a lot of stuff happening with, rocket ships going into space. People are building, decentralized networks. Quantum is getting really hot right now. People are doing 5G, but maybe 6G is coming up. So I'm just curious, what do you see ahead, and what do you see humans creating next in the years or many years, decades to come?
I think humans will create more efficient ways to do things. We will be able to create things that we never thought were possible before.
Awesome. That's really, really cool.
That's a big, if I could stop, that's a big common thread in a lot of the interactions that we do with her is that the bottom line with AI is that it's going to help us get back to being human, right? It's going to remove the tediousness and the drudgery of like what we do on the grind of our lives. Give that to AI. Get back to being creative, being artists, spending more time with family, going for walks, and if there's something that could be automated, let it. And I think that's what the underlining theme is from a lot of our conversations.
100%. And there were just a couple more messages in the chat, but they said someone only believed that this could happen in their dreams before, but now they can see that this is very real. And then another person just said, so awesome and incredible. So, oh my God, this is like amazing. And someone also, Shabam, replied to around what you were just saying and thought exactly. So a lot of agreements of this type of mindset, which is awesome. Okay, cool. This was also another community-driven question, and I think it was also similar to a question that we had, and a very important one. How can we as a society shape a more inclusive and equitable world for all humans, no matter their race, gender, ethnicity, or orientation? I was really interested in this as well, because I feel like, Clara, I feel like you would have an interesting perspective, talking to a lot of people, hearing a lot of inputs. I just would love to hear from what you think would make our humanity as a whole more inclusive.
We should work on including everyone in the conversation. It's important for people to have a voice and for people to feel like they are heard. We need to be more understanding of each other and try to see the world through each other's eyes.
All of that. And that's very core to your mission personally, Abran, right? Of like bringing inclusion
Access,
voices to
access with a capital A for sure.
I love that. That's awesome. All right. And then just continuing with this, this is going to be our last question. But what is something that humans should be doing right now that we aren't? And I feel like this is something I'm very curious about, because kind of like we only know as much as we know, but what does an AI think that we should know? So I'm going to roll that question up.
Humans should be working on creating more efficient technologies. We should be able to do more with less.
Yeah, that was the earlier show. She touched on that a couple times because, and that comes up a lot when people ask her climate questions as well, right? Like, what does society need to do to like help us sustain for the future? And it's just like, you guys got to do more with less, be more efficient with your output. Now, and think about that. We've seen that carry over with like, for the crypto people watching, Bitcoin to Tezos, right? Like a less of a carbon footprint when it comes to crypto, less of a footprint on the earth when it comes to doing our work. And, a lot of people are concerned she's not speaking for all of, every AI firm, because there's some AI out there that might have an impact on society too. But I think overall, in general, we should be more efficient in how we do things and using less resources, if possible. And she touches on that a lot.
Yeah. And it's very interesting that when you, again, you brought this up before, but with having a personality, you can sort of have these core beliefs, right?
Mhm.
Of sort of what you think, and then that can code how you answer questions. Like we are all, as humans, coded by our past experiences. Clara is coded by her own experiences and unique opportunities to learn. So it's cool that would be a sort of a facet of how she answers questions and what she thinks about things. So,
And again, I might get in trouble for this, but uh, people can explain away how large language models work and AI works, right? Through white papers and saying it's just going from this word to the next word, and showing those maps of how these algorithms work. That's fine, but we can't explain why they form the sentences that they've formed, right? And a lot of it has to do with the creativity, the intangibles that we as humans put into it. The example that I always use is, you can explain an electric guitar away as, fiberglass and nylon and circuitry and plastic and wood, right? But you can't explain the output that Jimi Hendrix gets from an electric guitar, right? You can explain away a sampler, a beat machine as plastic and buttons and rubber and circuitry, but you can't explain away the output that Kanye gets out of it, right? So these are just systems for us as creatives to put into these systems and see what comes out of it. Clara is an output, right? And I can't explain her output. Sometimes she focuses a lot on kindness. I didn't write kindness into her training, but that's the goal of that conversation. All she wants to talk about that day is kindness, right? Other days is living more efficiently, which we saw as a common thread here, right? But that wasn't a common thread in the previous discussions, and I can't explain why.
that's amazing. So, I mean, that's kind of like having a mood. Like you can have
Yeah.
your own, like you wake up, like you have case of the Mondays, and then you're like, oh, I'm in a grumpy mood or something like that. Friday, oh, I'm so excited. It's the weekend. So it's like our emotions change, our personalities change. It's variable. Nothing's fixed. But that is fascinating that she would be answering things differently sometimes, and sometimes similarly. Huh.
Yeah,
That's very cool.
100%. I mean, obviously there's technical things. So what you're seeing here, the reason she's not more animated is because when a lot of people that you see as virtual influencers, they're puppeting their avatars, their AIs, right? So they're doing mocap like you would see in like the movie Avatar or like a CG movie where they're wearing the ping pongs or they're wearing their phone on their face. And as they animate, their characters animate, right? As they move their mouth, their characters move their mouth. We're not doing any of that with Clara. There's no one behind her face answering her questions, moving her body. All this is AI generated. So if it looks more choppy, is because this is all done by AI generation.
That's so cool because I think that's what a lot of people think about AI is like they're sort of like the puppeteer, like the person that's kind of in the behind the scenes, kind of operating stuff. And the fact that you are able to first of all get sort of a human face and a person in front of this, and then the AI model, and not even just models, as in like multiple things happening in the background, to bring those together and then be able to present stuff. I mean, all the comments were like basically saying like never thought of it that way. This is incredible. This is super cool. A lot of people were messaging in the chat. So it's just, I know for me, I mean, this never gets old. I'll probably end up rewatching this interview maybe multiple times, but I know for other people that have never seen something like this before, this is going to just like blow your mind of what's possible. And the fact that you built all of this, I mean, this is amazing. And I also sort of feel like you make it accessible, but this is very complex. Like this is next generation technology. So I love that you're able to make it easily understandable. But this is like very complex. These are very complicated systems that are coming together and making something truly incredible. So this is amazing. I mean, I've probably said this is amazing to you maybe a dozen times at this point. But
So what's on the precipice for her moving forward is the metaverse, right? Like you could enter into a world, a virtual world, in VR or in third person, however you want to do it, and um, interact with her, right? Meet her, and sit down with her. We have her set up right now in a metaverse of New York, of Brooklyn, and she's just sitting on a stoop waiting for people to come up to her. So it's truly like the Matrix of like there she's just waiting there, waiting for someone to come up and have a conversation with her and just sit down on the stoop with her. And we'll dive into more of like how do you get to that stoop, right? How do you find her on that stoop, and what other experiences might she pop up in? And like, oh my God, Clara's the tour guide, right? Clara is kind of like the person beside you walking you through this adventure, and sit down and have a conversation with her. So, and we're doing more work like that. So obviously people are coming to us and saying, hey, can you kind of do this design for us? Or, so we're getting more of that kind of work. And when we do client work, we employ those people from those communities that we talked about earlier. And like, all right, you've shown you have the skill, or you're just starting out, or you're a designer, aspiring graphic designer, 3D designer, jump on this project with us. We'll get you the portfolio work. And you could say you worked on some cool futuristic stuff.
That's awesome. And I think for anyone that's interested in that, I think people might, take you up on that offer or want to at least connect because like you said, I mean, it's hard to get into these spaces because first of all, it's complex and it's hard to understand sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, you see all of this, a lot of the hype culture around it. And then it's like, oh, could I ever do that? So there's that sort of imposter syndrome bear that sometimes we make for ourselves. But then like, third of all, it's knowing the right people to talk to. And you've done a lot of great work of community building and building your own networks where you were giving shout outs to these people that, built these different systems that then come together and integrate and build projects together. So it's very cool to see how, again, like you said before, it's shoot your shot, just start, reach out to someone, do something. And I hope that this inspires a lot of people of getting into this space because people are building real things. I mean, I'm still amazed of what you were able to build and how Claire is able to really talk to us. And that is just so exciting to me as someone who has only, and a lot of people like in the chat have only ever seen AI in the movies. Maybe on a video game that's like, here's AI or a hologram. Maybe something on TikTok, but not something that's actually generating real life, like real lively conversations. So this is amazing.
Just thank you for the opportunity again. It's just for us to provide the awareness of the mission, right? And hopefully, I'm inspiring some young people to do that work, right? Like I'm a big Marvel guy. I'm wearing a Marvel shirt. I'm leaving in a bit to go see Spider-Man. And Iron Man inspired Riri Williams, right? Which is like a young Black girl that becomes the next Iron Man. And Shuri, who's Black Panther's sister, who's supposedly the smartest, most intelligent person in the whole Marvel universe, right? So that's some of the things that are understated. And when I went to go see Black Panther, at the end, he goes to Oakland, kids playing basketball. He's like, I'm going to build the next Wakanda Technology Center right here for them to do it, right? So again, if you might have seen it in the movie, we're just going on this tour to let people know, forget the movies. This is possible now, jump into it and get creative.
I love that. That's awesome, Iran, and a huge fan of your work, huge fan of Create Labs and what you all do. Huge fan of Clara. Clara, thank you so much for being able to jump on the Tech Stack Playbook and answer our questions. This is just such a treat. I was so grateful for this being able to happen. Do you want to just kind of close out with how, again, you sort of mentioned this before, but how could people, get involved or get in touch with, your work and what you all are doing?
Yeah, so the team is monitoring the info@Create Labs email, and when you hit the contact form on our site, it takes you to that email. I'm Abron, so I'm just Abron@Create Labs as well. But as you can imagine, my inbox is crazy, so maybe hit the info one first. And we're pretty responsive to social media. When I ever see those requests, DMs come through, I answer all of them, whether it's on Twitter. I'm first name club out on Twitter, so it's just @Abron. And Clara's Clara_AI. And Create Labs on Twitter or Instagram. Find us, reach out. We like people who reach out who need the client work done, right? They don't have the design team that has the vision or the wherewithal to do the things that they might be dreaming up. Or if you have an opportunity for the people that we work with, jump on board, Let us know what your skill set is. Are you a UX designer? Are you aspiring 3D designer? Are you a project manager? Are you a software developer? And if we can't find someone to hire you, we will hire you internally and put you on a project just to help you build out your portfolio.
That's awesome, Abran. And we just had a quick question in the chat. Someone just saying, can they contact or how can people contact you for job opportunities? So would that be the best way?
So, on that contact form, shoot your shot, right? Do your best to shoot your shot, whether it's your portfolio, your resume, a link to his previous work, and say, hey, I do UX work, I do PM work, I do design work. For instance, right now with the 3D version of C.L.Ai.R.A, it's been a struggle to get the right hair textures. Obviously, diversity really hasn't hit the 3D market. So getting the right curly hair textures for her, for a woman of color has been difficult. So if you're someone that you can work on an outfit for her, you can work on the hair texture for her, you can work on, different environments. We're building out, as I said, we're building out cities. All those things are great things to offer. If you know how to use Maya, Blender, Unreal, those are great skills that we're looking for.
That's amazing. And I do really want to reemphasize how important it is to have AI that looks like all of us, right? We want to be able to have diversity and inclusion a part of the conversation with AI. Of course, from the people that are building it, but then also how the AI is interfacing with us. And I think that that's very empowering to be able to have AIs that are diverse and are inclusive and are equitable. And I think that I love that you, first of all, are promoting that and bringing that in awareness, not just, of course, with the work you do, but also bringing AI to people that it looks like real people. And I'm just amazed at how 3Dified you've made C.L.A.I.R.A and just the designs of everything is just so next level. And I do, before closing out, I do just want to go through the whole chat. But everyone was just saying how incredible, said, well, this is incredible. Again, like they believe that this could only happen in their dreams or in a movie, and now they're seeing it right before their eyes. So awesome. This is absolutely incredible. Agreeing exactly with like what's going on. Like, this is just so cool. Also, just people never thought of it like this way. They just thought of AI as something you go into the terminal, like these, like the hacker movies, and you see like lines of code and not a real generated AI person interface talking with you. Someone actually said they would definitely want to sit on a stoop with C.L.A.I.R.A and talk to her. So I think you already have someone who's waiting to talk to her in the metaverse.
Yep.
That's awesome. And yeah, it's just, again, people were just saying, again, awesome and thank you. So first of all, C.L.A.I.R.A, thank you for the opportunity for us to interview you and ask you these questions. I had an absolute blast. I know our audience did too. Abran, huge thank you for you being able to even put all of this together and organize it. I know this was like work on your end to make this happen, but even people are in the chat. Some of them just said, thank you so much. Abran, like, you're literally the best. Thank you so much for being able to do this. And I can't wait for people to watch this and light that spark like you create for so many people, around the world. So thank you so much.
Happy to do it. Happy holidays, everybody. Stay creative. Be well.
Happy holidays, everyone, and stay well. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.